this is something about North Mills. This is the complete firm of North Mills over there. There are the two main warehouses where all the bales of hemp and cotton came in. These sections along here, the last two sections were the two big carding rooms where the great big carding machines were held. The other sections were where all the twisting and the spinning was done. In those rooms there were perhaps 200 young girls, and the men worked on the card machines there. My name is Ronald Poquette, and I was born and bred in Bridport, the son of Nathaniel Poquette. My mother and father had 9 children, and there were 4 brothers and 5 sisters. And we all worked, when we became of age, we all worked into the net firms and the rope making industry in Bridport. The whole family were more or less involved with the production of either netting or in rope making. I left school at the age of 14, and I applied for a job at a small rope making and net making firm in St Michael's Lane called William Gale and Sons. William Gale and Sons was a little family firm that employed about 40 to 50 people. The man that I worked with, we actually made the ropes, and we used to make 4 ropes to a time. And the material in those days was mainly cotton or hemp. The hemp was grown locally in those days, but the cotton came from the Lancashire mills. Well, after several years, I became of age and I was called up into the services. And after my time in the army, I came out, but I didn't go back to Rendell's, back to William Gale's. I applied for a job at Rendell's and Coombs in West Allington. Now, Rendell's and Coombs was the main firm for making ropes in Bridport. The majority of rope making was made at Rendell's and Coombs. It consisted of 4 walks and a striking walk. And there was the warping house that all the material was made and brought up to us to put into our walks to make the ropes. I worked on all 4 walks in my time. The main walk I worked on was what they call the West Walk, which made the fine lines. But occasionally I was called upon to go over into the heavy walk and assist with the rope making there. When I started work at Rendell's and Coombs, the working day was from 8 in the morning till 6 in the evening. And between that time you had an hour lunch break, which came in at 12:30 to 1:30. So we did a whole day then. But as the years went by, orders became more frequent, from America especially, and they started a series of shift working. It was a very busy rope works, Rendell's and Coombs, and our work went all over the world.
Hemp and flax were grown in abundance in the Bridport area, possibly from as early as Roman times. The hemp and flax was made into rope and twine, which created a thriving industry in the town and nearby parishes. In 1213, under threat of invasion, King John made an urgent order to the Sheriff of Dorset. He wanted the people of Bridport to work night and day to make rigging for his navy. In this way, Bridport made her position secure as supplier of rope and cordage to the ships of the Royal Navy, each fighting vessel needing miles of rope for its rigging, which required constant renewal. They kept this monopoly until early in the 17th century, when the royal dockyards were built at Woolwich and Plymouth. This was a difficult time for Bridport, but out of the recession came a necessity to diversify, and trading in fishing nets to Newfoundland eventually restored the industry. In the 18th century, Bridport harbour was improved and enlarged, so the exporting of goods was able to increase, and the town began to prosper again. The spinning of yarn, the braiding of nets, and the weaving of sailcloth was originally done at the homes of outworkers, where whole families were involved. It was more than a cottage industry. Virtually everyone was occupied in the trade in some way.
Well, then my brothers, in later years, they were working at William Edwards, and they were the outriders for William Edwards, and they took every kind of net you could think of to Portland, Abbotsbury, All the way round Dorset they went, delivering these different types of nets for people to do. And that was hand braiding. And a lot of people did this with a wooden lace and a needle. And that was made over the kitchen tables in their home.
The spinning mills came into operation at the beginning of the 19th century, and later it became viable to have everything under one roof. So factories were created, which coincided with mechanization being introduced. Initially, people such as Joseph Gundry would have sold the hemp and flax seed to farmers and jobbers, then bought back the harvested crop, put it out to hecklers and spinners, and finally organized the making and selling of the finished product. William Hounsell saw the same opportunities as did many other entrepreneurs, and what had been a manual craft for generations became a manufacturing industry, divided into many small companies. The use of imported rather than locally grown materials became commonplace. Once again the companies diversified, first into sports nets and later camouflage and aviation netting. It was an industry that thrived at times of war.
When the strands and everything was hung up in the walks, you had to have a drying process. And so you had to open all these windows all the way down the walk so that the air would flow through it to dry the strands. But there was no heating at all in the sheds. And in the summer they were very warm, but in the winter they were very, very cold. And the temperatures dropped very low at times. In fact, when the snow came, the snow used to come through the roofs and would pitch on you as you were working. The hemp material was very dusty, and it was a very terrible condition to work in. The cotton was quite good because that was more of a pure quality. We always used to say we were always happy when we were working with cotton because we could keep it so much cleaner. But as soon as the hemp came in, it was a very dusty job. At the back of the works, they used to build these little huts that people could come out and perhaps take a 10-minute break and get their breathing orders back in tune again. And then they would go back in and do another session. The synthetic fibre was the making of us, because you could more or less go to work in your best suit if you wanted to when you was working with synthetic fibre. Because of the durability of plastics and nylon, it had a lot longer life. And so the orders, it tended to drop off. We weren't getting the orders. People weren't spending so much money on as they were when cotton and hemp was in operation. Me and my friend and Mr. Edgar Rawls were the last ones to actually make a rope in Reynolds and Coombs Rope Works before it was closed down. The orders came through to us one day that we had to stop making ropes. So we had to pack all our material up, and we all came out to Hounsell's firm where they installed all these new machines. Now this was a complete new procedure to me because I've never been involved in that type of rope making. These machines were Roblons made in Denmark. They were quite big machines, and we had 8 of them installed in a big room, and they were all caged in, and the machines were all set up with a great big drum in the front. They were all electrically controlled. All you had to do was press a button and the whole thing was set in motion. And then they decided eventually that they would move the whole process from North Mills into the court works at Gundry's. So I moved again. In my lifetime, I think I moved about to 5 different areas of working. So I was taken down to the court works, and all the machinery was there installed again, and that's where I finished my career in the rope making.
When the Second World War ended, many of the firms found it necessary to amalgamate to survive. By 1963, when competition had become greater from other countries, the last 2 firms, Bridport Industries and Joseph Gundry and Company, joined together as Bridport Gundry.
My name's Frances Williams, and I started off my netting career working for Joseph Gundry's, which then later became Bridport Gundry's. And in the last 2 years I've worked for Huck Nets at Gore Cross. I spent about 19 years working on the netting looms, making all various types of netting, and then I swapped and went into the handwork, which was shutting and repairing and fitting nets together, and that's what I've been doing ever since. The early machines were all French machines from Paris, Zhang's. There's a lot of work involved in working those machines, a lot of knots and different things to do. But as the years went on, we had more modern machines from Japan, and they were much more sophisticated. They had electronic control boxes on them, and they would obviously tell us what was wrong with the machine so we could put the faults right much easier and much quicker. We learnt various hand skills. First of all, you would have to learn how to cut the netting from the bales and crip the end salvages off to make a good row for shutting. Then you would join it together. And we also learnt to repair any faults in the netting. And then we learnt all different skills for rigging the nets together, shutting and baiting, and various other things for fitting nets together, depending what you were making. When I went to the netting factory, they had trainers who would teach somebody the netting machines, and once you were fully trained, then they would train the next newcomer. And with the hand skills, it was the same process. I went into a department, and the lady in charge taught me all the different various hand skills as I went along. The more I learnt and became efficient at it, and then in turn you start teaching all the new ones. So it's a rolling process. You never finish. You're always learning something new. On the netting machines, on the old Zhang, the bobbins were threaded up from the back of the machine, and the operator mainly changed the shuttles that were running on the front of the machine. They were rather like a tea plate size, and you would fill them up with twine, and they would fit into a holder on the front of the machine, and they would have to be threaded up by the operator and tied into place. Most of the netting machines would have about 400 bobbins and 400 shuttles running on them, which all ran out at different various times, so they were having to watch all the ends, 400 top and bottom ends, for any knots or faults, make sure the hooks were picking up the ends and twisting them and making a knot. And they would obviously pick up if there was a slight fault and a hook would miss an end and therefore make a hole in the net, so they could repair it up, change the shuttles when they ran out, and then they would refill them ready to go back in the machine again. When I first went into Gundry's, we were in several smaller rooms, but then in the mid-60s they built a new netting machine room, and we had well over 60 netting looms in that room, so we're all of them going at different speeds and at different times. Yes, there was a great deal of noise there. You could only really talk to the person who was working right next to you. The machines were almost set in pairs, so you worked back to back, and you could converse with the person behind you, but you wouldn't have been able to talk to anyone else sort of further down the line, because obviously the noise from the looms you wouldn't have been able to hear. The new Japanese machines were put in the new building that we had, and they were all up on the first floor, so that when the netting came off the machines, they would go down through a slot in the floor and pile up beneath, which made it a lot easier for the repairers to check through the nets as they came off the machines and repair any faults that were in them.
The craftsmanship of the workers and the enterprise of the merchants made Bridport's netting and cordage famous throughout Britain and her colonies for centuries. Bridport exported its products throughout the world.
What connection have all these things, one with another? Well, from Nelson's victory to this bag of sprouts, they all use ropes and nets. Net making is an industry which most of us don't know a great deal about. We probably think of a few old characters with gnarled fingers and fruity pipes spinning yarns to eager youngsters whilst casually making nets on the jetty. Nothing could be further from what really happens, for here in Bridport is a factory where 500 people are employed full-time in the business of making nets of all descriptions.
It was a worldwide thing, and I always said you could make anything there, from a billiard pocket to a deep-sea fishing trawl. Also, there was all the work that was involved with the Admiralty and the government. I mean, all the landing nets for the Royal Marines used, they were made there. And the camouflage nets that were put over the guns, everything was made there. Even the pull-throughs that the soldiers used to clean their rifles, they were all made. In fact, I very often made pull-throughs myself as a homework. This is the rope making firm of Rindles and Coombs. And here we see the heavy walk making the actual ropes. That is the bottom jack that runs on the railway, and the man standing behind it is the lader. Now he'll actually take over and make the rope. The man in front is the bottom end for him. Now this is the bottom jack, this is what drives it, and here is the lader actually making the rope going up through the whole length of the walk. These walks were 60 fathoms in length. And this is the walk where I worked on, and this is with the 12 lines each side here. We made 24 lines to a time. These were smaller lines. These were fishing lines. There again you see the lader actually making the process as he's twisting the rope together. And there are 4 ropes being made. There he takes the material and puts it into the cogs, onto the jacks. And here you see him coming up through, twisting the 3 strands together that actually makes the rope. As he gets to the end, he locks the machine up. These are the cheese warps that we use for making the material. And here is the finished article, the hanks that are finished. And there again, they see the man going up through. And the material is in the cart. And it runs on this long railway track. And it all depends on the way he walks and the speed and how we make the rope. This is the warping machines where the material is used to make our ropes with. And this is the warping house. As you see, it's coming over these rollers and going onto these gigantic cheese warps. This is the end of the material that's being used, and that's the fishing lines. Here again is the warping house. And here again is the girl tying off the hanks as they're made. And they all came off the rail. The rail collapses and they take them off. This is the winder that hanks up the material when it's finished. And you'll see the man is actually tying off the lines. And they slip them off, and then they're taken into the packing shed and bundled into bundles.
This is a Zhang netting loom. It came in various sizes for making different types of netting. So you can see that we've got about 400 hooks on the bar that's moving, which picks up that front thread and twists it, picking up the thread coming in from the back. It brings it out over now, drops it down over the holders to make the knot, which forms each row. So I think these ladies are joining 2 pieces of net together. We often get machine faults in the net, so this lady here is repairing any fault in the net. It's really similar to darning, filling in the hole again with meshes. And these ladies are rigging a fishing net, I believe. So they call it salvaging, joining the netting onto ropes. They would obviously then put on floats and buoys onto it. This is another picture of the netting looms. I think here we can see someone changing shuttles on the machine. They're like round discs, similar size to a tea plate filled with twine. I think these, so just examining the net to make sure there are no faults in it before it's sent out. And that, I think, are just piles of finished netting, various types.
I remember one day that was when the trade union came into the firm, which were in the latter years. We were called out on strike, and we all marched out of our rooms, everybody down tools, and the stewards came round and took us all out in the field, and there was a bit of a confrontation with the management, and we appointed several people to go up and talk to the management, and that was over a wage claim that they weren't prepared to discuss with us. But in the end, everything was actually sorted out, and we went back into work again. But that was very rare. But they treated people right. I mean, the latter years, the firm I worked for in Bridport Gundries were very, very fair workers, and the management and staff were quite good. There were problems at times, but overall, it was not a bad setup.
I suppose over the years I've made some really good friends over the years in both aspects, the machine work and the hand work. So when the firm closed down, yes, I lost a lot of contact with a lot of friends that I'd worked with, and people always worked well together. They helped one another with their work.
Sometimes I think I missed out a lot on life by working in the industry. I mean, I worked there for 50 odd years, but at least I had employment. In those days, you were always sure you had a job, and even if short time working came, you were never told that there was never a job for you. So, I mean, I worked there when I was 14, and I came back and went back in the firm again, and they had to keep my job open. That was a stipulation. If anyone coming at the services, you had to have your job waiting for you. But they were good days, and the environment was very good, and I worked with some marvellous people. And there were some very clever people also working in the firms. Because we were factory workers, there was a lot of other things that we were very good at. So really, all in all, I had a family of my own, 5 children, and I had to go to work. But it was a job it was a happy work. I mean, the comradeship in the walks when I worked in the walks was really something. I mean, we all got on so well together. And it was working as a team all the time. So really, all in all, I enjoyed my life in the firms, and it could be very interesting. Some of the work was very interesting indeed. And when you look and see where all these things went, all over the world, different parts of the world, America, Iceland, the Faroes, I mean, it was quite a big industry.
At the beginning of the 21st century, there have been big changes, but the trade survives. Bridport Gundry ceased operation in the year 2000. It was a traumatic time for many local families. Gundry's premises are now occupied by American-owned Bridport Aviation. For the new company, netting for aerospace and military applications is the way forward, ranging from helicopter cargo nets to tank camouflage, and even to an emergency restraint net for the space shuttle. It combines high-tech methods with a surprising amount of handwork, including using outworkers. New inventions such as the knotless net have made their appearance. Elsewhere in the town, management buyouts have created new names in the industry. Companies such as Redport Nets specialise in products ranging from angling nets to billiard table pockets. Hand braiding and outwork are still important.
An old lady used to do it down the road from us, and she would have been 100 last year. And we used to watch her do it, and I could never do it. She used to stand there for hours upon hours doing these long strips in there, not like this, it was big long strips she used to do. We were very small then. We used to fill her needles for her as well. I've done some of the television, done a net for that. It was for a gladiator programme, a big round circular one, and they used it for throwing over a man in the gladiator film. And I think it It was like the 4 foot across circle one, and it had like a lead line around it, and they just threw it and it went over this bloke's head. And it was actually shown on, I think it was BBC Two. It was quite good watching your own work on telly. And then I do black nets that they fit across the racks on a lorry for putting your messages in, and that sort of wrapped. And sometimes on the back of train seats you'll see the newspaper racks. I've hand braided loads and loads of them as well. So it's quite a variety of things that you can braid through different, if it's long, once you know how to do it. When I've took the football kids down the laundrette to wash, I've stood in there doing them, and it's surprising how many people have come to do their washing and they're standing and watch you doing them. And it is really amazing, especially people that don't live in Bridport. You know, you get holiday makers that come down and they're standing there fascinated because you're hand braiding a net and they haven't seen it done before. Take off that, and there's a finished pocket. So you can see exactly what